Thanks, and it's a pleasure to listen to all of you. Just a quick question for Michael. Michael, how should we think about the comment that what a president can do is put forward a worldview and to sort of sketch that out for us and so forth? And I'm trying to struggle how to think about that in the context of Obama, because to me, what Obama offers is sophistication. And he seems to treat us, I mean, his speech on race, I thought was just profound in its nuance. And so here's a guy who seems to have nuance, who seems to not just want to kind of paint a picture, and yet the importance of painting a picture. So I wondered if you could sort of talk a little bit about how to negotiate that.
That's a good question.
Well, nuance is certainly important, and sophistication is very important. But nuance, in the service of what? And I mean, here we had I agree with you about his racism speech. That was wonderful, and if that had been the way he continued to act and continued in his presidency, it would be a very different kind of situation we'd be facing today. But I don't know if you listened to his speech at accepting the Nobel Prize, but it was a nuanced speech in favor of war. And I mean, it was very smart from the standpoint of those who believe that the way to achieve a secure world is through militarism and dealing with the enemy. And he was conflicted about it, but that's basically, he was making the same arguments that we've heard since at least the war in Vietnam. The same kind of stuff, well put, beautifully put, and so forth. But in the service of what? His nuanced stuff in relationship to the economy. But in the service of what? In the service of who? It's not in the service of ordinary Americans. He's not articulating a nuanced view of how do you deal with the needs of ordinary Americans. He's dealing with how do you protect the existing system. And the existing system is not working for an awful lot of people. And so we have to be able to give a nuanced response to that. And but we also be able to say in a few words, hey, we're for generosity, not for domination. We're for a populist program that is in a progressive direction, not a populist program tied to militarism and racism and homophobia. I mean, in other words, you have to have a moral core directing you. Now, I don't know what's going on in him, but I know that what he's doing in the country doesn't reflect that. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate, we called this a conference to support Obama, to be the Obama that Americans thought we elected. And the way to support Obama, there are two strategies. One, you don't need to come to NSP for. You will find it in the Democratic Party. And that strategy is, right on, maybe you've got a plan, we've got to stick with you, you're doing a lot of good things, like that. Now, that's one strategy. And if you want to go with that strategy, there's a place for it. There's the Democratic Party. We're thinking that there's a place for a voice of spiritual progressives that has something different to say, which is, we love you, we care about you, and we think that you need to articulate a coherent alternative. And so even though we see you as brilliant and nuanced and sophisticated, we also need you to articulate in a clear, value-oriented, spiritually oriented way what this country needs. And as we said, we can sum that up in one little phrase: a caring society, caring for each other, caring for the planet. And every piece of legislation that I put forward as president, being Obama, let's say, that I put forward is going to be reflective of that. And if you find anything in my legislation that I put forward that isn't about caring for other people or caring for the planet, then you critique me on that, because I want to be held to that. Well, that's what we're pushing him towards.
Hi, and thank you very much. I'm part
of a peace group that, since the beginning of the war, of the occupation of Iraq, has been standing on a corner every Saturday morning, regardless of the weather. The question that I have is that since Obama was elected, we've had a very large Tea Party presence across the street from us, and it's been a learning experience. At first, we were being yelled at through bullhorns and all this, and we couldn't quite understand why we, as people who were standing for peace, were being attacked by them. We didn't understand why we were being targeted. But some of us have felt the importance of dialogue, to try to dialogue, and some of us have felt that there may be common ground. And I wondered if you might want to comment on that, because we are in a situation where we are attempting to dialogue, and when we do attempt, we have found it to be beneficial. Thank you.
I'm Catholic. Anybody who's Catholic knows that the absolutes are very difficult to deal with. But somebody said, yes, force rules the world, but opinion loses force. Now, that's an important concept. Up until Vatican II, there are people in this room who were taught spiritually to hate me spiritually, while I was being taught on the other side to hate you. One declaration changed that. One. When Vatican II ended with a statement of the quality of all faiths and calling for at least at that point, for a great Christian conversation, that pastor opened this church. My abbess opened our monastery. The place just suddenly sprung open like a tulip in spring. And we all began at least a series of ecclesiastical tea parties. It was all tea and cookies in Christianity, everywhere you could see. But you know what it did? It brought us into contact with one another, with the goodness in the other person's eyes, with the quality of what their churches had witnessed in our own cities. By all means, set up these personal, interactive conversations. Don't make it heavy. For God's sake, don't bring out a piece of legislation. Just come in and talk about your hopes for this country, your love of this country, your concern for what they're concerned about, how impressed you were at their witness, and ask how we can all move toward these things together and do it again and do it again and do it again, because it's the mind at the bottom of the pyramid that's holding up the guy on top.